My name is Morgan, and at 35, I sacrificed everything to give my parents security. 10 years of brutal saving, $400,000 gone in one signature to buy them a home. Then I discovered the unthinkable. They forged my name on legal documents and gave my house to my sister Amber. The betrayal still burns like acid in my chest. How could the people who raised me steal the biggest gift I'd ever given? Before I share how my world crumbled, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. If my story resonates with you, please hit that like and subscribe button as I navigate through the hardest betrayal of my life. Growing up, money was always tight in our household. I remember the constant tension in the air whenever bills arrived. My parents huddled at the kitchen table with calculators and worried expressions. We lived in a series of increasingly run-down rental apartments, moving almost yearly as rent increases outpaced my father's modest income as a warehouse worker. My mother worked part-time at a local grocery store, but her hours were inconsistent and barely helped make ends meet. Despite financial hardships, I loved my parents deeply. My father would still find ways to make me laugh, creating silly games out of household objects when we couldn't afford toys. My mother always ensured I had clean clothes for school, even if they were second-hand. They taught me the value of education as the pathway to a better life, and I took those lessons to heart. My relationship with my younger sister Amber, however, was complicated from the start. 3 years my junior, Amber seemed to receive an unbalanced share of our parents' attention and resources. While I wore hand-me-downs, they found money for Amber's dance classes. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, I worked weekends at a local diner to buy it myself, but they somehow managed to afford Amber's cheerleading uniforms. My parents explained this away with Amber needs more support or you're just naturally more independent, Morgan. I accepted these explanations, burying any resentment and channeling my energy into succeeding on my own. School became my sanctuary. I threw myself into academics, understanding early that scholarships were my only ticket to college. While Amber enjoyed the social aspects of high school, I spent evenings in the library, maintaining a perfect GPA. By senior year, my efforts paid off with a partial scholarship to State University. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was a start. College was a brutal balancing act. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously: morning shifts at a campus coffee shop, evening tutoring sessions, and weekend retail work. Between classes and work, I survived on minimal sleep and discount ramen noodles. Meanwhile, my parents somehow found the resources to send Amber to a private college with dormitory housing. When I called home exhausted and overwhelmed, they'd offer platitudes: "You're so strong, Morgan. We never worry about you like we do with Amber." Despite the challenges, I graduated with honors and secured an entry-level position at a financial consulting firm in Chicago. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the growth potential was. I lived with 4 roommates in a cramped apartment, took public transportation, and continued the frugal habits of my college years. Every promotion was a victory, each salary increase carefully allocated between modest living expenses and aggressive savings. Throughout those early career years, I maintained contact with my parents through weekly phone calls. They remained in a precarious housing situation, moving between rental properties as landlords sold buildings or raised rents beyond their means. Each call included updates about their latest housing crisis: the broken furnace the landlord wouldn't fix, the black mold in the bathroom, the neighborhood becoming unsafe. These conversations planted a seed in my mind, one that would grow into an ambitious plan. By my early 30s, I had worked my way up to senior financial advisor, managing investment portfolios for wealthy clients. The irony wasn't lost on me: I guided others to financial security while my own parents continued to struggle. During one particularly difficult call, I learned their landlord was selling their building, forcing them to move for the 3rd time in 5 years. My father, now in his 60s with developing arthritis, mentioned how tired he was of packing and unpacking. My mother, her voice thin with exhaustion, talked about how they might need to move to an even less desirable neighborhood to afford rent. That night, sitting in my modest 1-bedroom apartment, I had upgraded from roommates but still lived frugally, I made a decision that would change all our lives. I would buy my parents a home. A place they could never be evicted from, where they could finally find stability in their retirement years. What I didn't realize was how this act of devotion would expose the painful truth about my family dynamics and lead to the most profound betrayal of my life. My journey toward buying my parents a home began the morning after that fateful phone call. I sat at my kitchen table before dawn, calculator in hand, running numbers that would consume my thoughts for months to come. As a financial advisor, I knew exactly how to create a plan. I just needed to apply my professional skills to my personal mission. The promotion to senior financial advisor had come with a significant salary increase, but a house for my parents would require much more than my new income alone. I needed to accelerate my savings dramatically. I opened a new spreadsheet and created what I called Operation Family Home, a brutal savings strategy that would consume every aspect of my life for the next 2 years. First, I downsized from my one-bedroom apartment to a studio half the size and in a less desirable neighborhood, cutting my rent by 40%. I sold my modest car and committed to public transportation exclusively, eliminating car payments, insurance, and maintenance costs. My food budget was slashed to basics, meal prepping simple dishes in bulk each Sunday. Restaurant meals, even casual ones, became non-existent. Coffee came from a cheap drip machine at home instead of my former daily coffee shop stop. Social life? Virtually eliminated. I declined invitations to anything that cost money: concerts, dinners out, weekend trips. Friends eventually stopped asking. Dating disappeared from my life entirely. I couldn't justify spending money on relationships that might not last when every dollar needed to go toward my parents' future security. The few friends who remained in my life thought I was taking frugality to an unhealthy extreme, but they didn't understand the driving force behind my choices. While drastically cutting expenses, I also pursued income increases relentlessly. I took on additional wealthy clients, working evenings and weekends. I taught financial literacy workshops for extra income. I even consulted for a financial technology startup on the side. My life became an endless cycle of work and minimal sleep, but the numbers in my savings account grew steadily, which was all that mattered. My health took a hit during this period. Stress-induced insomnia became my nightly companion. I lost weight from the combination of cheap food and forgotten meals. Dark circles became a permanent feature under my eyes. Colleagues commented on my appearance, but I brushed off their concerns. This was temporary sacrifice for a permanent solution to my parents' housing insecurity. 18 months into my plan, an unexpected opportunity accelerated my timeline. A senior partner at our firm retired, creating a vacancy that I competed fiercely to fill. The promotion came with a substantial bonus and salary increase. The night I received the news, I updated my spreadsheet and realized I could potentially reach my goal within 6 months rather than the year I had projected. With my financial target in sight, I began researching neighborhoods in my parents' city. I wanted somewhere safe, with single-story homes suitable for aging residents, close to shopping and medical facilities. I consulted with a realtor remotely, sending her my criteria and budget. After several virtual tours, I identified a modest 3-bedroom ranch house in a quiet, established neighborhood. The house needed cosmetic updates but was structurally sound, perfect for my budget and my parents' needs. The $380,000 price tag represented nearly every dollar I had saved. It would leave me with virtually no emergency fund and no retirement savings. As a financial advisor, I recognized the irony and foolishness of this decision. I would never recommend such a financially precarious move to a client. But this wasn't about sound financial planning, it was about finally giving my parents the security they had never managed to achieve for themselves. I consulted with a real estate attorney about the purchase structure. Initially, I planned to buy the house in my name and transfer ownership to my parents immediately. However, the attorney advised a different approach: purchase the house in my name, allow my parents to move in, then transfer ownership after a year to avoid certain tax implications. This seemed reasonable, and I proceeded with securing financing based on my excellent credit score and substantial down payment. The day I wired $380,000 from my account to the escrow company felt surreal. In seconds, years of sacrifice disappeared from my account. I sat in my tiny studio apartment that evening, eating ramen noodles at my folding table, alternating between exhilaration and panic. Had I just made the biggest mistake of my life? Or the most meaningful gesture of love? Either way, there was no turning back now. The closing process went smoothly, and soon I held the keys to a house I had only seen through video calls. I scheduled a week off work, my first vacation in years, to fly back to my hometown and surprise my parents with their new home. I prepared a folder containing house photos, the address, and a timeline for the ownership transfer. I also included a letter expressing my love and gratitude for all they had sacrificed for me growing up. What I didn't realize as I boarded that flight, heart full of anticipation, was that I wasn't just giving my parents a home. I was setting the stage for a betrayal that would shatter my understanding of family forever. I arrived in my hometown on a crisp autumn day, rental car loaded with balloons, champagne, and a large framed photo of the house with a red bow attached. The presentation needed to be perfect. I'd imagined this moment countless times during those long nights of overtime work and financial sacrifice. My plan was elaborate but meaningful. I would invite my parents to dinner at the restaurant where we used to celebrate special occasions when I was a child, a place we could rarely afford back then. During dessert, I would present them with the framed photo and keys, capturing their reaction on video. Then we would drive directly to the house for a tour of their new home. I had even coordinated with a local cleaning service and handyman to ensure the house was spotless and minor repairs completed before our arrival. Fresh flowers waited in vases throughout the rooms, and I had stocked the refrigerator with their favorite foods. Every detail was designed to make this reveal perfect. I hadn't told my sister Amber about my plan. Our relationship remained distant. Occasional birthday texts and obligatory holiday calls comprised most of our communication. However, my parents insisted she join us for dinner, saying it had been too long since we were all together as a family. Reluctantly, I agreed, not wanting anything to detract from my parents' special moment. The dinner started well enough. My parents seemed genuinely happy to see me, and even Amber made an effort at pleasantries. We reminisced about childhood memories, carefully avoiding any topics that might highlight the disparities in how we were treated. I ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu, a small indulgence in my otherwise frugal existence, and toasted to family. After the main course, as the server cleared our plates, my heart began racing with anticipation. This was the moment I'd worked toward for years. I signaled to the waiter, who brought out a special dessert with "Home Sweet Home" written in chocolate sauce. As my parents looked confused, I reached beneath the table and produced the gift bag containing the framed photo, keys, and document folder. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "For as long as I can remember, you've struggled with housing insecurity. You've moved from place to place, always at the mercy of landlords and rising rents. You gave me everything you could growing up, and now it's my turn to give something back." I handed them the bag, my hands shaking with emotion. "I've spent the last few years saving every penny I could. I've worked nights, weekends, holidays, all for this moment. Inside that bag is the key to your new home. Not a rental, a home that will be yours forever. You never have to worry about moving again." My mother's hands flew to her mouth as she pulled out the framed photo. My father, usually stoic, had tears streaming down his face as he examined the keys. They looked at each other, then at me, in stunned silence. This is ours," my mother finally whispered. "Yes," I replied, my own vision blurring with tears. "It's paid for. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, in Oakwood Estates. Safe neighborhood, 1 story, so no stairs to worry about as you get older. Close to your doctor's and a grocery store." They rushed around the table to embrace me, both sobbing openly now. The other restaurant patrons had fallen silent, watching our emotional scene unfold. Some were wiping away tears of their own. It was everything I had imagined and more. Except for one detail, my sister Amber sat motionless, her expression unreadable. As our parents returned to their seats, clutching the house documents, I caught a flash of something dark cross her face. Resentment? Jealousy? Whatever it was disappeared quickly behind a tight smile. "Congratulations," she said flatly. That's really something, Morgan. I chose to ignore her tone, focusing instead on my parents' joy. After paying the bill, I suggested we drive directly to the house. My parents could barely contain their excitement during the 15-minute drive to Oakwood Estates. I pulled into the driveway of a modest but well-maintained ranch house with mature trees and a covered front porch. "Welcome home," I said, handing my father the keys. The house tour was emotional for all of us. My parents moved from room to room in disbelief, planning where their furniture would go, admiring the updated kitchen and spacious master bedroom. My mother kept touching surfaces, countertops, walls, window frames as if confirming this wasn't a dream. In the living room, I sat them down to explain the legal aspects. "The house is currently in my name for tax purposes, but we'll transfer it to your names after 1 year. My attorney advised this approach to avoid gift taxes." "I have all the documents here," I said, opening the folder I'd prepared. I showed them the deed, the closing documents, and the transfer timeline. I explained that they could move in immediately, the utilities were already in their name, and I'd paid the property taxes for the first year. "This folder has everything you need to know about the house," I explained. "Warranty information for the appliances, contact information for the handyman I've already hired to do some minor repairs next week, and the code to the security system. There's also information about the neighbors, the couple next door already invited you to their barbecue next month." My father clutched my hand tightly. "Morgan, we can never repay you for this." "You don't need to repay me," I said sincerely. "Just enjoy your retirement in a home where you're secure. That's all I want." We ended the evening with champagne on the front porch, making plans for their move the following weekend. I would need to return to Chicago for work, but promised to fly back to help with the moving process. My parents couldn't stop thanking me, and for once in my life, I felt I had truly made them proud. As we prepared to leave, Amber announced she needed to use the bathroom. She was gone for an unusually long time, but I thought nothing of it then. Later, I would recall her extended absence and wonder what she had been doing, perhaps already plotting what would come next. That night, as I lay in my hotel room, exhaustion and happiness washed over me in equal measure. After years of sacrifice, I had given my parents the security they deserved. I fell asleep easily for the first time in years, unaware that my gesture of love had set in motion a betrayal beyond anything I could have imagined. 3 months after the emotional house reveal, I was deep into a complex client portfolio restructuring at work when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar local number from my hometown. Normally, I would let unknown numbers go to voicemail during work hours, but something prompted me to answer. "Hello, is this Morgan Lawrence?" a professional female voice inquired. "Yes, speaking," I replied, tucking the phone between my ear and shoulder as I continued reviewing spreadsheets. "This is Patricia Simmons from the County Tax Assessor's Office. We've been trying to reach you regarding property tax discrepancies for the residents at 1842 Oakwood Drive." My attention immediately shifted from work to the call. "Discrepancies?" "I paid the annual property taxes in full at closing 3 months ago." "Yes, we have record of that payment," Patricia confirmed. "However, there's been a change in ownership filing that's creating confusion in our system. Our records show a deed transfer was processed last month, but the new owners haven't established tax payment arrangements." A cold sensation spread through my chest. A deed transfer? There must be some mistake. The property should still be in my name. Our records indicate ownership was transferred to Amber Lawrence on December 18th. The documentation appears to have your signature authorizing the transfer. My mind struggled to process her words. Amber? My sister? And my signature? I hadn't signed anything since the original closing documents. "That's impossible," I said, my voice hollow. "I never authorized any transfer. Can you send me copies of these documents?" Patricia agreed to email the documents, and I ended the call with a promise to investigate and get back to her. Within minutes, my inbox contained copies of legal papers I'd never seen before, yet there at the bottom was what appeared to be my signature, a reasonable facsimile, but definitely not written by my hand. Still trying to make sense of this information, I called my parents. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again with the same result. I sent a text, "Need to talk about the house. Please call ASAP." No response. Over the next 2 weeks, a disturbing pattern emerged. My calls to my parents were consistently sent to voicemail. The few texts I received back were vague and evasive: "Everything's fine with the house," or "We're very busy right now, we'll call soon." When I directly asked about the ownership transfer, they stopped responding altogether. Meanwhile, more concerning communications arrived. A notice from the mortgage company about missed payments, which made no sense as I had paid cash for the house. A utility company called about transferring service to a new account. Each interaction revealed another piece of a puzzle I couldn't quite assemble. I turned to social media for clues and found something that made my stomach drop. My sister had posted photos of her children in front of our new home, the very house I had purchased for my parents. The comments section was filled with congratulations and questions about their move, to which Amber replied, "Finally got our forever home. The kids each have their own room now." Increasingly desperate for answers, I called my sister. Unlike my parents, she answered immediately. "Hey Morgan, what's up?" she asked casually, as if nothing was amiss. "Amber, are you living in the house I bought for Mom and Dad?" I asked directly. A pause. "Oh, you haven't talked to them yet?" "Yeah, they decided the house was too big for just them, so they're staying in their apartment. They thought it made more sense for us to use it since Jacob and I have the 3 kids." "Without discussing it with me?" "The house is in my name, Amber. I just got a call from the tax assessor saying ownership has been transferred to you." Another pause, longer this time. "Look, you should really talk to Mom and Dad about this. It was their decision. I've been trying to reach them for 2 weeks. They're avoiding me." "They're probably just busy," she said dismissively. "Listen, I've got to pick up Maddie from soccer practice. Why don't you come visit? See the house with all our furniture in it. The kids would love to see their aunt." The casual invitation, as if nothing inappropriate had occurred, left me speechless. Before I could formulate a response, Amber had ended the call with a quick "Gotta go, bye." That evening, I booked a flight to my hometown for the following week, using the excuse of an unexpected client meeting nearby. I needed to see firsthand what was happening. The growing sense of betrayal made sleep impossible, and my work performance began to suffer as my mind constantly returned to the mysterious deed transfer and my family's suspicious behavior. When I arrived in town the following week, I drove directly to the house without announcing my visit. As I pulled into the driveway, the changes were immediately apparent. Children's bicycles littered the front yard. The neutral beige door I had selected was now painted a bright teal. Through the front window, I could see unfamiliar furniture and a large entertainment system. I rang the doorbell, heart pounding. My sister answered, surprise flashing across her face before she composed herself. "Morgan. You didn't tell me you were coming today." She blocked the doorway slightly, not inviting me in. "I thought I'd surprise you," I replied evenly. "May I come in?" She reluctantly stepped aside. The interior had been completely transformed. The serene, retirement-friendly space I had created for my parents now looked like a chaotic family home with toys scattered across the floor, sports equipment in corners, and walls painted in bright colors. "Where are Mom and Dad?" I asked, looking around. "At their apartment, probably. They're still in the same place they've been for years." The statement hit me like a physical blow. They had never moved in. The entire purpose of the house, providing them with stability in their retirement, had been subverted. "Amber, what's going on? I bought this house for our parents. How are you living here? How did the deed get transferred to your name?" My sister crossed her arms defensively. "Mom and Dad decided I needed the house more than they did. They signed it over to me. They couldn't sign it over to you. It wasn't in their names yet. It was in my name." A flash of panic crossed her face, quickly replaced by defiance. Look, I don't know all the legal details. They handled everything. If you have questions about the paperwork, you need to ask them. It was clear I wouldn't get honest answers from my sister. I left after an awkward and brief conversation, driving directly to my parents' apartment, the same rundown building they had lived in for years, the very situation I had sacrificed everything to help them escape. Standing outside their door, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Whatever explanation they offered would determine the course of our relationship moving forward. I knocked firmly, unprepared for the truth I was about to discover. The door to my parents' apartment opened slowly, revealing my father's face, which shifted from surprise to guilt when he saw me. Behind him, my mother appeared in the hallway, her expression equally stricken. "Morgan," my father said quietly. "We weren't expecting you." "Clearly," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "May I come in?" They stepped back wordlessly, allowing me to enter the cramped apartment they should have left behind months ago. Nothing had changed, the same worn furniture, the persistent smell of mildew from the bathroom's perpetual leak, the draft from poorly sealed windows. All the problems I had worked so hard to help them escape remained. We sat awkwardly in their small living room, the elephant in the room growing larger by the second. Finally, I broke the silence. "I just came from the house. Amber seems quite settled there." My parents exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. "Morgan, we need to explain," my mother began. "Yes, please do," I said. "Explain how my sister is living in a house I purchased. Explain how the deed was transferred to her name with what appears to be my forged signature. Explain why you're still living here when I gave you a beautiful home." My father leaned forward, hands clasped together. "After you left, we got to thinking. The house is lovely, but it's really too big for just us. Amber's family has been struggling, Jacob's contracting business isn't doing well, and they were facing eviction from their rental." "So you gave them my house?" I asked incredulously. "It seemed the sensible thing to do," my mother interjected. "Amber has 3 children. They needed the space more than we did." "That wasn't your decision to make," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "The house wasn't even in your names yet." "It was still legally mine." An uncomfortable silence fell. My father cleared his throat. "We may have facilitated the transfer process." "Meaning what, exactly?" My mother looked at my father, who nodded slightly before she continued. "We had all the paperwork you left with us. We just helped things along. The transfer was going to happen eventually anyway." The implication was clear, but I needed to hear it directly. "Are you saying you forged my signature on legal documents?" Neither met my eyes, which was answer enough. "Do you understand that's fraud?" I pressed. "It's a criminal offense. You could go to jail." "Don't be so dramatic," my father scoffed, his demeanor suddenly shifting from guilt to defensiveness. "It's a family matter. We just moved the timeline up a bit. Without my knowledge or consent. And changed the recipient from yourselves to Amber." "Amber needed it more," my mother repeated, as if this justification was sufficient. "You've always been the successful one, Morgan. You have a good job, a nice apartment in Chicago. Amber struggles. She always has." The familiar refrain hit me with new force. Throughout our childhood, Amber's needs had always superseded mine because she needed more support. Now, as adults, the pattern continued. My sacrifice was expected because I was the successful one. "I lived in a studio apartment and ate ramen noodles for 2 years to save for that house," I said quietly. "I gave up my social life, dating, any semblance of comfort. I worked 60-hour weeks and took side jobs. I emptied my entire savings and retirement accounts. That house represented every penny I had. And we appreciate that," my father said dismissively. "But family helps family. Amber has children to think about." "And what about me?" I asked. "Did either of you think about what this would do to me? Financially or emotionally?" My mother had the grace to look uncomfortable, but my father's expression hardened. "You've always been independent, Morgan. You'll bounce back from this." Amber wouldn't. The cruel calculus of their decision became crystal clear in that moment. My resilience, my success despite lack of support, had become justification for further exploitation. Because I had proven I could survive without their help, they felt entitled to take everything I offered and redirect it to my sister, who had been conditioned to expect such preferential treatment. "Did you plan this from the beginning?" I asked, a horrible thought dawning. "When I showed you the house, did you already know you would give it to Amber?" Their silence and averted gazes confirmed my suspicion. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. "The night of the reveal dinner," I continued, piecing it together, "when Amber was in the bathroom for so long, was she calling Jacob to tell him about their new house?" "Morgan," my mother pleaded, "try to understand. We had to think of the grandchildren." The mention of my sister's children as justification ignited something in me. "And what about my future children? I emptied my savings, my retirement accounts for this house. I set myself back financially by a decade or more." "You'll make it back," my father said with certainty. "You always do well for yourself." I stood up, unable to remain in their presence any longer. "I need to know exactly what legal documents were forged. I want copies of everything." "You're not going to cause trouble, are you?" my mother asked anxiously. "It would devastate Amber if she had to leave the house now that the children are settled." The audacity of her concern for Amber's potential disappointment rather than my actual betrayal left me speechless momentarily. "I'm going to the county clerk's office," I said finally. "Then I'll decide what happens next." As I turned to leave, my father called after me. "Morgan, you need to think about what's best for the family." I paused at the door. I've spent my entire life thinking about what's best for this family. It's clear none of you have ever extended me the same consideration. The county clerk's office confirmed my worst fears. Not only had the deed been transferred using my forged signature, but there was also a mortgage taken out against the property, a mortgage in my name, again with a forged signature. My sister and her husband had essentially stolen my house, then borrowed against it, potentially leaving me liable for the debt. When I confronted Amber with this information later that day, her facade of innocent confusion crumbled. "Mom and Dad said it would be fine," she insisted. "They said you'd understand because family helps family." "This isn't help, Amber. It's theft and fraud." "Don't be so selfish," she snapped, her true colors emerging. "You've always had everything come easy to you. Perfect grades, scholarships, great job. Some of us have struggled. Some of us deserve a break too." The delusion in her perspective was staggering. Nothing in my life had come easy. I had worked for every opportunity while she had been cushioned by our parents' preferential treatment. Now, she genuinely believed she was entitled to the fruits of my sacrifice. "You have until the end of the week to consult an attorney," I told her calmly. "Because I will be pursuing legal action. This isn't just about the house anymore. It's about the fundamental betrayal by my entire family." "You would sue your own parents?" she asked incredulously. "Your own sister? You forged my signature. You stole my house. You took out a fraudulent mortgage in my name. What did you expect would happen when I found out?" Her expression shifted from indignation to calculation. "Nobody will believe you. It will be your word against all of ours. Mom and Dad will back me up." In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity the toxic family dynamic I had been entangled in my entire life. I had been cast as the strong one, the successful one, the one who didn't need support, roles that had been used to justify neglect and now outright theft. "Forgery leaves evidence, Amber," I said quietly. "And I've already spoken with the county clerk and the mortgage broker. There will be an investigation." As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with messages from my parents, pleased to work this out as a family and warnings not to tear the family apart over money. They still didn't understand, or refused to acknowledge, that this wasn't about money. It was about betrayal of the deepest kind. Sitting in my rental car, I made a call to a fraud attorney in Chicago. The path ahead would be difficult and painful, but for the first time in my life, I would prioritize my own well-being over a family that had proven they would never do the same for me. The flight back to Chicago was a blur of grief and determination. By the time we landed, I had progressed through shock and sadness to a cold, focused resolve. This betrayal wouldn't be smoothed over with tearful apologies or family guilt. There needed to be accountability, and I was prepared to pursue it through legal channels. My first call was to Elaine Dawson, a partner at a law firm specializing in fraud cases. Her office scheduled an emergency consultation for the following morning. That night, I barely slept, compiling a detailed timeline of events and gathering every document related to the house purchase and subsequent forgery. Elaine's office was in a sleek downtown building, her credentials impressive on the wall behind her desk. As I laid out my case, the purchase, the forged documents, the unauthorized mortgage, her expression grew increasingly grave. "This is one of the most egregious family fraud cases I've encountered," she said after reviewing my documentation. "The evidence of forgery is clear. Your signature on the transfer documents doesn't match your verified signatures on the original purchase papers. What are my options?" I asked. "We pursue this on two fronts," Elaine explained. "Civil action to reclaim your property and damages, and criminal charges for the forgery and fraud. The latter will involve police and potentially federal authorities since mortgage fraud crosses into federal jurisdiction." The thought of my parents and sister facing criminal charges made my stomach clench, despite their betrayal. Elaine noticed my hesitation. "Many victims in family fraud cases struggle with this decision," she said gently. "But consider the magnitude of what they've done. They've stolen your life savings, put you at financial risk with a fraudulent mortgage, and shown no remorse. Without consequences, this behavior continues." I nodded, knowing she was right. "Let's proceed on both fronts." The next weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. I filed a police report detailing the forgery. Forensic document examiners confirmed the signatures weren't mine. The mortgage company launched their own fraud investigation. Elaine filed for an emergency injunction to prevent any further financial actions regarding the property. My family's response was immediate and vicious. My parents called repeatedly, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations. "How could you do this to your own family?" my mother sobbed during one call. "After everything we've done for you." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. What exactly had they done for me, compared to what I had sacrificed for them? My sister took a different approach, launching a social media campaign portraying herself as the victim. Heartbroken that my own sister would try to make my children homeless, she posted, alongside photos of her kids playing in the house I had bought. Mutual childhood friends and distant relatives, unaware of the full story, sent me messages questioning my actions. Some family members took sides without even speaking to me first. The pressure to drop the case intensified when my maternal grandmother called. "Morgan, this isn't how our family handles disagreements," she said, her voice quavering with age and emotion. "Your parents are devastated. Your sister's children are confused and frightened. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive?" "Grandma," I replied carefully, "they stole nearly $400,000 from me. They forged my signature on legal documents. This isn't a disagreement, it's a crime." "But their family," she insisted, as if this fact negated all wrongdoing. These conversations took a heavy toll. I began experiencing anxiety attacks, something I'd never dealt with before. Sleep became elusive. My performance at work suffered enough that my supervisor called me in for a concerned discussion. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lindsay, who specialized in family trauma. "What you're experiencing is a profound betrayal trauma," Dr. Lindsay explained during our sessions. "Your family has not only betrayed your trust but is now attempting to manipulate you into accepting their behavior. That's a form of gaslighting." With her help, I began setting strict boundaries. I communicated with my family solely through my attorney. I blocked them on social media and asked mutual friends not to relay messages. These boundaries provided some relief, allowing me to focus on the legal proceedings. 3 months into the case, we faced our first court appearance for the civil suit. Walking into the courthouse, I was unprepared for the ambush waiting in the hallway. My sister stood with her 3 children, ages 4 to 10, clearly coached to look sad and frightened. When they saw me, my oldest nephew ran over. "Aunt Morgan, are you really making us leave our house?" he asked, his lower lip trembling. Before I could respond, my attorney intervened, ushering me away and reporting the incident to the judge. This manipulation backfired spectacularly. The judge reprimanded my sister's attorney for involving minors in an attempt to influence proceedings. Inside the courtroom, the facts spoke for themselves. The forensic evidence of forgery was irrefutable. The judge granted the preliminary injunction, freezing any further financial actions related to the property. My sister and her family were not ordered to vacate immediately, but they were prohibited from making any changes to the property pending final resolution. As we left the courthouse, a local reporter approached. "Ms. Lawrence, can you comment on the case against your family members?" The story had apparently caught media attention, adding another layer of stress. Elaine advised against comment, but the damage was done. By evening, a local news outlet had run the story: "Financial advisor sues parents and sister over house dispute." The public attention brought unexpected consequences. My employer called me in, concerned about potential reputational damage to the firm. "Clients trust us with their finances," my supervisor explained uncomfortably. "This situation raises questions about financial conflicts within your family." I was temporarily moved to back-office duties away from client contact, a humiliating demotion that added financial strain just when legal bills were mounting. The betrayal had now cost me not only my savings but was threatening my career. The criminal investigation moved more slowly than the civil case. 6 months in, however, the district attorney's office announced their intention to pursue charges against my parents and sister for forgery and fraud. My family hired a prominent criminal defense attorney, who immediately reached out to Elaine about a potential settlement. Their offer was insulting. They would surrender the house if I dropped all criminal charges and paid them a transition allowance of $50,000. Elaine rejected it without even consulting me, knowing how far it was from acceptable. The stress began manifesting physically. I developed migraine headaches, lost weight, and my hair started thinning. During one particularly difficult week, I was hospitalized briefly for exhaustion and dehydration. Dr. Lindsay became concerned about my deterioration. "The legal process is important," she said during one session, "but so is your health. What would help you feel some measure of peace right now?" After reflection, I realized I needed support beyond my legal team and therapist. I reached out to a college friend who had experienced family estrangement, and she introduced me to an online support group for victims of family financial abuse. For the first time, I connected with others who truly understood my experience without judgment. 1 year into the legal battle, we received the breakthrough we needed. The mortgage broker who had processed the fraudulent loan came forward with crucial testimony. Facing his own legal troubles for inadequate verification procedures, he revealed that my father had claimed to have power of attorney to sign on my behalf, another lie in their web of deception. This testimony strengthened both the civil and criminal cases. Elaine believed we were now positioned for a favorable judgment, potentially including punitive damages beyond the value of the house itself. The criminal case had also advanced, with arraignment scheduled for my parents and sister. The night before the arraignment, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Morgan, it's Dad," came the voice I hadn't heard directly in months. I remained silent, waiting. "The DA says we could face jail time," he continued, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Your mother is terrified. Amber is beside herself about the children. Please, can we talk about this? There must be some way to resolve this without destroying the family." For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt completely clear. "You destroyed this family when you chose to steal from me, Dad. When you forged my name. When you took everything I worked for and gave it to Amber without a second thought about what it would do to me. Tomorrow, you'll face the consequences of those choices." "We're your parents," he said, as if this fact alone should erase all wrongdoing. "And I was your daughter," I replied, ending the call. The next morning, watching my family enter the courthouse for arraignment, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness for what could have been, and the recognition that the true healing of my life would begin only after this painful chapter concluded. The legal battle reached its conclusion 18 months after I discovered the betrayal. The civil court ruled decisively in my favor, awarding me full ownership of the property, plus $120,000 in punitive damages to cover legal fees and compensation for financial hardship. The judge's ruling was unambiguous, characterizing my family's actions as a calculated scheme to defraud that showed callous disregard for both legal standards and familial obligations. The criminal case concluded with a plea agreement. My parents and sister avoided jail time but received 3 years probation each. They were ordered to complete community service hours and financial responsibility courses. My sister and her husband were additionally required to pay restitution to the mortgage company for their part in the fraudulent loan. When the final judgments were delivered, I felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a strange emptiness. The vindication was necessary but hollow. No court ruling could restore the trust that had been shattered or heal the realization that my family had valued me only for what I could provide them. With legal ownership of the house restored to me, I faced a difficult decision about what to do with the property. Every option felt tainted with painful associations. Keeping it meant maintaining a connection to my hometown and, by extension, to family members I now needed distance from. Living in it myself was impractical given my career in Chicago. Renting it would require ongoing management from afar. After much deliberation and consultation with both my financial advisor and therapist, I decided to sell the house. The real estate market had improved since my original purchase, and despite some damage from my sister's family's occupation, the property sold within 6 weeks for $425,000, a modest profit over my initial investment. Standing in the empty house before the final closing, I walked through each room, acknowledging the dreams I'd had for this space and my parents' retirement. I allowed myself to grieve not just the financial betrayal but the deeper loss of the family I had thought I had. In the master bedroom that my parents had never occupied, I performed a small, private ritual, burning the copies of the forged documents in a metal waste bin, watching the physical evidence of betrayal turn to ash. The sale proceeds allowed me to rebuild my savings and retirement accounts. I made a fresh start professionally as well, accepting a position with a smaller financial advisory firm that valued my experience and ethical stance. My temporary demotion during the legal proceedings had actually broadened my skills in back-office operations, making me more versatile in my new role. The most challenging aspect of moving forward was navigating life without my family of origin. Despite everything, there were moments when habit made me reach for the phone to share news or seek advice, only to remember the chasm that now existed between us. Holidays became particularly difficult, empty spaces on calendar days that had once been filled with obligations, however complicated. Dr. Lindsay helped me understand that estrangement was not a failure but a necessary boundary for my well-being. Family relationships should be reciprocal, she explained. When they become chronically exploitative, separation is sometimes the healthiest choice. Through the support group for family financial abuse survivors, I connected with others who understood this difficult journey. Their stories helped me recognize the patterns that had existed throughout my childhood: the unequal treatment, the expectation of self-sacrifice, the emotional manipulation, all of which had culminated in the ultimate betrayal over the house. 1 year after the legal resolution, I received a letter from my mother. Unlike previous communications, it contained no demands or accusations. Instead, she expressed regret not for the actions themselves but for the consequences her family now faced. She wrote of my sister's struggle as a single parent, apparently her husband had left, of my father's health problems, of their financial difficulties. Reading between the lines, it was clear she still hoped I might resume financial support. I crafted a careful response, setting clear boundaries while avoiding cruelty. I wished them well but explained that our relationship could only ever be rebuilt on foundations of respect and honesty, not financial obligation. I received no reply. Instead of allowing this silence to reopen wounds, I channeled my experience into constructive action. I began volunteering with a financial literacy program, helping young adults understand predatory lending, family financial dynamics, and the importance of boundaries around money. Sharing my knowledge without revealing the personal details of my own experience became deeply fulfilling. I also started a small, anonymous blog documenting the recovery process from family financial abuse. The writing was therapeutic for me and, based on comments, helpful to others facing similar situations. One reader wrote, "Your words gave me the courage to stop enabling my son's financial exploitation." Setting boundaries isn't abandonment, it's self-respect. 2 years after the legal battles ended, I met Daniel, a landscape architect with his own history of complicated family dynamics. Our shared understanding of boundary setting and healthy relationships provided a foundation for connection that felt both supportive and respectful of individual needs. Unlike previous relationships where I had felt pressure to handle everything myself, with Daniel I learned the beauty of interdependence, the balance of giving and receiving support. When Daniel proposed after 18 months of dating, we had frank discussions about finances, family expectations, and how we would navigate potential challenges together. This transparency was healing, reinforcing that healthy relationships built on trust and mutual respect were possible. On a personal level, I worked to redefine my understanding of family. Blood relationships had failed me, but I could create a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and community members who demonstrated genuine care. I celebrated holidays with this chosen family, creating new traditions that honored authentic connection rather than obligatory gatherings. Occasionally, I would receive second-hand news about my parents or sister through distant relatives or hometown acquaintances. These updates would sometimes trigger complex emotions, but therapy had equipped me with tools to process these feelings without being overwhelmed by them. I could acknowledge sadness for what might have been without questioning my decision to maintain distance. 3 years after the betrayal, I received an unexpected email from my nephew, now a teenager. He wrote that he had recently learned the truth about what had happened with the house and wanted to apologize for his unwitting role in the courthouse confrontation years earlier. His message showed maturity and an emerging ability to think independently from his mother's narrative. I responded warmly but cautiously, recognizing that his journey with his own family would be complex. Today, 5 years since discovering the forged documents, I've rebuilt financially and emotionally. The betrayal no longer defines me, though it has certainly shaped my approach to relationships and boundaries. I've learned that genuine love doesn't ask for sacrifice without reciprocity, that healthy families build each other up rather than depleting one member to serve others. Most importantly, I've learned that when family bonds become chains, it's not only acceptable but necessary to free yourself. The worth of any relationship lies not in DNA or obligation, but in mutual respect, honesty, and care. Sometimes the most loving choice you can make for yourself and ultimately for others is to walk away from relationships that consistently undermine your well-being. If my story resonates with you, know that healing is possible after even the deepest betrayals. The path isn't easy, and there are days when the weight of loss feels overwhelming. But gradually, with support and intentional boundary setting, you can build a life of authentic connection and peace. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you through that process? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what another person needs to hear today. If this story provided insight or comfort, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and clarity in navigating your own relationships with wisdom and self-compassion.